this is Dread from Epic Builds, and in today's video topic, we are going over what I believe to be one of the most underrated uniques in the game in terms of power and usage by the community. Vessel of Strife was released in a hotfix quickly after the release of the Temporal Sanctum, which was introduced last patch. It is a 10% drop rate from Tier 4 Chronomancer Jurla and always drops with at least one legendary potential. It is much rarer to drop more than one potential on it, so usually you can only realistically get a 1 LP one. The most important part of this item is the line of text that reads 40 to 66% of health regen also applies to ward per second. That is a huge difference in rolls, so to get a good one with the legendary modifier you want should take a while. Health regeneration historically was very bad for the last few years of Last Epoch's development, and it was very limited. This fixes the entire problem with health regen with this one line though. Health regeneration shares suffixes with health suffixes. So if you want a high life total while also having a high regen total, you would require ridiculous amounts of good gear. So normally what most people would do is stack health regen on all of your suffixes, then use hybrid HP idols in your idol slots to make up the health you lose from running all of these HP regen slots. Most builds can't afford to give up their idols, which made health regen a very underutilized recovery mechanic, but one example that used it before is the minion ForgeGuard archetype. Thanks to the fact that there are no good minion idols for ForgeGuard, and since Manifest Armor scales with our item affixes, so he gains HP regen as well, it means that this archetype loved health regen, but not many other builds could afford it until now. So Vessel of Strife turns your HP into ward, which means it adds a lot of your HP regeneration as effective extra health, which ward is strong at being, an extra layer of HP. This was one of the biggest problems with HP regen before, as your HP affixes were always clashing with regen affixes, so this fixes it by giving you an extra amount of your regen as effective HP. This lets you actually feel tanky as a regen build, but this item has way more applications than that. Before I show you some great examples of this item working, I want to address the common comparison, Exanguinous and low life stacking. Well, low life Exanguinous is objectively worse than Vessel of Strife for multiple reasons. First of all, being you need an Exanguinous and Last Steps of the Living to make them function well. Vessel is just one unique and a few suffixes, which are free because you don't need HP anywhere. Another reason is you just end up with more ward per second than the prior two items combined. A person who has played an actual competitive low life build, Lizard's low life Shaman Spriggan, he has about 2.5k HP. For simplification, let's assume he has no life for some reason. Exanguinous gives you like 20% of your missing HP as ward per second, and 20% of 2500 is 500 ward per second. 500 ward per second is actually pretty average on most low-life setups due to gearing constraints. I'm currently utilizing a Vessel of Strife on my Spellblade, and I have close to 820 health regen currently. With a 62% Vessel of Strife, I get around 541 ward per second. 820 regen per second is nowhere near as much as I could get. Now obviously, this is an unfair comparison for Lizard's build because he has other reasons of being low life, specifically being able to use Berserker, which of course is very strong, with Exanguinous, and the free ward from having missing life and your Stormcrows giving you ward, but this is an exception, not the rule, as he has an actual reason to be low life. But I see a lot of Necromancers running around with an Exanguinous for absolutely no reason, only because someone told them to on YouTube. The last reason is, you don't lose your HP when you're running Vessel. I have about 4k ward standing still in town, but I also have like 1200 HP. It's not worse than the ward, so it's like 5.2k effective HP right there. I also regen 700 to 800 of that HP per second, which means unless we are literally one shot, it is very hard to actually die. The best part is, if you get hit to your life, you not only have 800 health regen, you also have the 500 ward regen on top of that. So technically you have a total of 1200 recovery of your EHP per second, which if you're new to Last Epoch is a lot. And a small comparison, real quick, while we're on this topic, we can build endurance through the passive tree or blessings and still benefit from it, which Exanguinous lacks. Exanguinous is still a very strong item currently, but it is also very situational when it is good, specifically when modifiers while in low life are involved, like Primalist Berserker, especially when you're trying to utilize the more damage. It also normally requires 1 to 2 LP of HP on it to feel usable and to feel good with it, while Vessel of Strife works out of the box and literally needs no extra modifiers on it specifically to be usable. I have Elemental Res on mine, but you could probably land HP regen and be happy. So, to showcase my point of how strong the Vessel of Strife is, I have two examples. The first being the normal use case, a Necromancer build. In this footage, you see Darkwook's Fire Wraith, Necromancer. Vessel of Strife turns this build from an awkward HP stacking build with Usurper's Mandate for all your sustain into an actual godlike being. We have a very small investment into Vessel of Strife, and we literally double our EHP, while also having way more sustain than your normal Necromancer setup. At 800 health regen, which is already a whopping 520 ward per second, which is significantly more than most Necromancer Exanguinous builds, especially since we still have access to our HP, and in totals 1320 EHP recovery per second, which is staggering to think about. We also have a full amount of endurance percentage to take advantage of as well, and it was just a few affixes and support from Aura of Decay, which has 200% increased health regen on it, and our blessing from Lagan, which also can get up to 200% increased health regen, so we also get more support from blessings and skills than the Exanguinous version. This version I showcase here is very bare bones, and I plan on making a much more serious attempt at Necromancer ward stacking very soon. The second showcase I have here is, of course, Spellblade. Spellblade has a very long and troubled history, as its entire defenses are based on ward sustain. Ever since ward retention got nerfed by 50% globally, the old Exsanguinous build stopped working, and it was forced to build HP and Leech. This was very bad, as it further stressed gearing on an already gear-intensive mastery. Then Vessel of Strife came to the scene. Thanks to a lot of support from Lagan's HP regen and exalted affixes, we can achieve a large amount of ward per second. For comparison, in Spellblade 3, we can get close to 130 ward per second with some intelligence investment thanks to Prodigy at the top of Spellblade. We already quintupled this with our Vessel setup. This means all we need to do is stack some int and ward retention, and we already have close to 4k ward standing still. And with some more support on the part here we could easily reach 6k ward max. This, of course, is just our Vessel setup, and our melee attacks give us a large amount of ward as well for even more assistance. These examples should help you understand how powerful this little relic can be, but to drive it home, something I said earlier, the Lagan blessing. So 200% increased health regen seems very innocent, right? Well, no. Currently, my flat HP regen is at 98 with the Spellblade build. Let's just round that up to 100 to make math simple. So 200% of 100 is an extra 200 flat regen, and 66% of that is 132 ward per second from Vessel. For reference, the empowered blessing of ward per second from Lagan is 20 to 30 ward per second. So the regen blessing is already 4 times better. We also have sources of extra health regen from skills like Sigils of Hope for Sentinel and Aura of Decay from Acolyte. So not only is it more efficient at base, Vessel of Strife also has a lot of support. One of these support items comes from Barabor's Persistence. It gives us 18 flat health regen and 18 intelligence, and it also gives us 26% health ward retention because it's on the Ivory Ring base. 18 health regen is comparable to what you can get on a helmet or a glove base, which is absolutely insane, and that alongside with the int and ward retention makes this the perfect pairing for Vessel of Strife. Hopefully, after all of this, you can understand why I believe this item to be so underrated and underutilized. It makes me sad whenever I see a Necromancer build not using this insane relic and opts for the inferior version of running a low life setup with Exanguinous just because someone who rates his build with letters from the alphabet told them to use it. But enough rambling. This has been Dread from Epic Builds, and I'm off to make more builds. hopefully with Vessel of Strife. See you all in the next one.